It's time for Deploy on Friday, the internet show that features two, well, I guess one really smart person and one kind of ignorant person, me, talking about the latest tech trends and news that we saw during the week. Joining me from Melbourne, Australia, is Jim Pelletier, and we have a special guest behind you there, Piggy the dog.
Yeah, Piggy the dog. I had comments that people could hear Piggy little noises last week. So I thought I'd at least have her in shot this week so people understood that those noises weren't me or
Yes.
anything else weird going on.
Yeah. So Piggy's probably got a pretty informed opinion on some of the things we'll be talking about, which is great. So she can give us one bark for yes and two barks for no.
100%. 100%.
Awesome. So this is the show that talks a little bit about the news and tech trends that Jim and I have seen during the week. We've got a lot of stuff covered. So let's go ahead and get started. We might as well race into it. It's an update from the Octopus Deploy blog, removing the Azure VM extension for Tentacle. So for those who may not be aware, there are such a thing as VM extensions for Azure. And what we decided to do was basically remove the one that we have for Tentacle. The reason being is that we found that there was basically a general sense that the Tentacle VMs themselves were being able to be provisioned in other means. We have things like ARM templates and DSC. So we felt like really no one was really using this, to be honest. And so we decided we were going to go ahead and remove that rather than maintaining it. So if you're at all interested as to the motivations why, and then also how to mitigate that change by utilizing DSC, or if you want other means as well, such as an ARM template, you can go ahead and do so by reading that blog. So we published this earlier this week. And as you can see, it's quite a lengthy post, lots of stuff to detail there. That's Jason. Come on, what are you going to do? So it's not as bad as XML, you know. So, but that's a change we recently made. So yeah, so just interesting points there. Another change that we made recently, for those of you who are using our Terraform provider, we recently shipped an update. 0.10.5. We've had a couple of releases in the past few days. This one did some bug change. We fixed a couple of bugs associated with the Terraform provider, and we also made one 4 days ago, as it mentions here. We updated some documentation. So we're slowly but surely getting some changes back into the Terraform provider based on the issues list that we have. We are making really good progress on the issues list. The issues list was hovering around 80 or 90, which is not great, but you know, we're slowly but surely getting through those. We're down to 58, and we've got a lot of work that's being done there. So stay tuned for that. Have you used our Terraform provider, Jim, or you care about Terraform at all?
I've never had to use it, but I was super impressed when I saw that we had it. I mean, it's something that a lot of the CI providers do deployment config as code now, but to provide that extra layer of configuration around the actual deployment setup itself is something that a lot don't do. So I was really impressed to find we had this.
Yeah, awesome. So good things there. All right, moving on to general news now. So, Jim, I'm wondering, are you secretively using ChatGPT to code underneath the covers? Or are you like everyone else and thinking this GPT thing's going to blow over pretty quick?
You know what? I actually did install ChatGPT this morning. Well, not ChatGPT, it was Copilot. But yes, I am using AI to code.
Same. Yeah.
I was writing some bash scripts and I'm like, I can never remember how to do an if statement in a bash script. 12 types of brackets and some dash something or other. So, yeah.
Well, the good news now is that we have APIs that you can target. So OpenAI has announced GPT and Whisper APIs for developers to use. So if you're at all interested, you can take a look at the blog post that talks a little bit about this. The GPT APIs obviously provides access to the language model that's available there. I believe this is ChatGPT 3, or the GPT language model 3.5, not 3. And then the Whisper APIs gives a sort of voice integration for that same language model. So those APIs are now available, and we're seeing some examples of what people can do with those APIs. So here's an example of Snap has built a pretty simple My API for Snapchat. Another example is Quizlet. So if you're looking to up your skills around particular technologies, etc. Another one here is Instacart. being able to figure out what should I have for lunch. I mean, I don't know what I would answer to these questions if it was me. I would be like, eat whatever you want. I don't care. So these and other examples are available there. And I guess this is the beginning of the AI revolution. So
Yeah. What was that one we were looking at the other week where it could do random API requests for you? It would turn.
Yeah, there's a few. There was one called HPIE.ai, which I believe is. So this is an example of a CLI that you can use to provide HTTP requests on the command line. So this is HPPI is a pretty nice utility. And then they've added an AI component to it to basically use a natural language model to describe the sorts of requests that you want.
So I'm just thinking about like, what can my home voice assistant do once you hook up, natural language processing, voice text to speech processing, and then something like this under the hood as well. Now it's got access to every API.
Fully sentient.
That's right.
Fantastic. Can't wait. So anyways, if you're at all interested, you can check out the blog post there. I think this will definitely continue to get some traction. We'll start to, I think, hear about some interesting applications. And so, yeah, I guess it's just one of those things. I mean, just on the note of AI and GPT and all that sort of stuff, I'm not terribly worried about this. I've been using this for a few months now since it was launched in November. And when I'm talking to a bunch of people about it, my impression of this is that it's just yet another tool in a person's arsenal to do things that they're interested in doing. So I don't think this is going to replace developers. I don't think this is going to replace copywriters. I don't think this is going to replace anyone who's doing anything that is of a technical basis. But I think it's just yet another tool that is, in your toolbox or tool belt to use for getting your job done. And I think much like spell checking was not the demise of people writing copy and IntelliSense, and now I guess Copilot, that's not the demise of developers. I don't think GPT will be the demise of other folks as well. So, we'll wait till GPT-4 comes out. Let's maybe wait till then. So, yeah. Anyways, good stuff. There's another post that hit my radar. Postman Flows are now more powerful and user-friendly. So, Postman is a wonderful tool. If you haven't seen it, I would check it out at postman.com. They basically took the idea of, hey, people are creating APIs out there and they want to be able to have some control over how they manage and document and all that sort of stuff and provision, requests, etc. And this tool has been around for a long time and I absolutely love it. And you can get it for free and you can share collections and all that sort of stuff. They have a new feature called Flows, which was announced a short while ago. And Flows is kind of interesting in the sense that it gives you this notion of how to visually represent your API workflows. So if you take a look at some examples, like here's what a block anatomy, this is what a block would look like. It's kind of akin to what you would see in typically a pipeline associated with a CI/CD tool. Blocks have messages and messages flow, et cetera, et cetera. So now what they've done is they've added some facilities to Postman Flows to do things like evaluations. This is kind of akin to what you have in Octopus, where you have like a manual intervention, I guess, sort of thing like block and wait. But in this case, evaluation is a bit different. Obviously, it's utilizing a SQL language to do some queries against your inputs and outputs. We have if blocks now, so it acts as a gate. Artificial intelligence support, of course. You got to have the AIs, right? So you can provide your queries in there. And so these and other types of blocks and facilities are now available in Postman Flows. So if you're looking to construct these things to basically underpin the way in which you're constructing your APIs via Postman, this is something you can take a look at. So that's really cool. Have you played around with Postman at all? Have you used Postman?
Yeah. Postman's definitely well entrenched in my toolkit. It seems like this would be an awesome tool for like proof of concepts and stuff like that as well. You've got a bunch of APIs, you're not quite sure what you want to build. This could get you a long way to sort of proving it out that it's a good idea.
Yeah, it's like one of those visual sort of power builder tools, I guess. What's old is new again, and what's new is old, and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, moving right along. This is something that crossed my radar, and I have to remind myself that there's folks coming into the industry all the time, and typically I'd look at this, I'm like, who cares? Like, let's skip over it. But what this is a 20-part video series up on YouTube entitled "Introducing Bash for Beginners." So it's Bash for folks who have no experience using a command line and are interested in using Bash in their kind of day-to-day work. And I thought this was an excellent idea. So Gwyneth and Josh, both from Microsoft, came together and they constructed this video series. If you go through it up on YouTube, it's fantastic. I actually watched it the other day at 2x speed, and just like, they're explaining things like, LS and PWD and CD and shell scripts and permissions and files and all that sort of stuff. But I think we have to remind ourselves that there's a lot of folks who come into our industry, don't want to read man pages, don't want to read documentation, learn by watching TikTok, learn by watching YouTube. And so we have to remind ourselves that, doing it this means is fantastic. And so here's the playlist. You can see all the topics that they cover. So they start very simply and they say, okay, how do you set up your environment? How do you get help? How do you navigate? How do you find files? And then they keep going and just, what's a function? They start writing scripts, etc. So it's really cool. Like, I thought this was a great idea. And yeah, I watched a number of them, as I said, and I really enjoyed this. So always kind of fun just to see, kind of like, oh, they're picking that up now. So yeah, definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, everyone learns in different ways, and then this plus Copilot, and you'll be a Bash guru in no time.
100%. Is that your shell of choice, or are you you're a Windows person, aren't you? One of those Windows people.
No. Well, I'm on OS X, so
Yes.
So I actually use ZSH mainly, but I honestly couldn't tell you much of a functional difference between the two. I'm sure
I switched to Z Shell in 10.11, I want to say 10.12, around that time frame. Yeah. And then Oh My Bash, I think, was another one that I looked at. There's a variety of other terminals as well that I've taken a look at. So yeah, definitely there's lots to pick and choose from. So but if you're looking at getting involved in Bash, getting your hands dirty, this would definitely be a great resource to use for that. So the folks over at Docker have shipped a new update to Docker Desktop 4.17, offering new functionality for a better development experience. Docker is, well, it's been a tool of choice for mine for a very, very long time. I remember I was using it back, like back in the 2000 teens, early teens sort of thing. And so they continue to iterate on this. And so they've got some new features here recently. And I mean, like within a few months, they've added new features like extensions and things like that, which we'll talk about in a second. But if you're looking to see what's new in Docker and maybe possibly take a stab at using it again, because I know some people moved away when they announced the new licensing model, they've got some new capabilities there. So you can, for example, take a look at images that are on your machine, have an inspection, perform that through a facility called Scout. You can also take a look at the extensions, which I mentioned earlier. This is if you're at all interested in writing your own. And there is quite an interesting ecosystem of extensions available. So this brings us obviously to the next blog post related to this, which was talking about all the extensions that have been recently published. So a lot of extensions are being added to the Docker experience, and these run inside the context of a Docker experience. So as you can see here on the left-hand side, you have typically what you would expect, things like containers, images, volumes, etc. And then underneath here is this section for extensions, and it's kind of like a marketplace of these extensions, and they do a whole host of different things, like around containers and images and inspecting values, and so everyone and anyone has been writing a whole bunch of these extensions and giving you access to all the internals of how various containers are running in context with Docker, and I think that's just fantastic. So there's tens, if not hundreds, of extensions by now. I remember when talking to the folks at Docker, there was only a handful of them, but now they're up to quite a few. And if you take a look at their marketplace, for example, they've got extensions from some lesser known folks, but some from some very well known folks. A lot of them operate against, obviously, the sort of inner workings of a container, etc. But if you're at all interested, there's a whole bunch that you can that are worth checking out there. And so you can see they've got tens, if not hundreds, now in their marketplace, which is fantastic.
Yeah, this was news to me. I had no idea the extensions ecosystem even exists for Docker, and I use Docker every day.
Yeah.
And some really interesting looking stuff in terms of interesting developer workflows.
So there's things like telemetry. If we take a look at some of these, like telemetry, if you want to take a look at, say, the shared store, these are the canonical ones that you would expect with containers. Like, what is my shared storage? Can I get the telemetry out of this thing? Because it's a bit of a black box when you're working with them. Like, they're immutable. You can't change them too much. You can't change them at all, except via, environment variables, right?
There was one I really liked before that was like connect a local container to an existing Kubernetes cluster somewhere else. I mean, that could just cut down your feedback cycle no end if you were working with some kind of cluster that you needed to iterate on a single container quickly.
Yeah.
I can't remember where it went past now, but yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, that's worth checking out there. And the blog post is available up on their site, which is at, of course, docker.com. Now, it wouldn't be a episode of Deploy on Friday if we didn't talk a little bit about GitHub. GitHub, of course, is the tool of choice at Octopus. I think everyone uses GitHub. Even the people in marketing uses GitHub. So Codespaces obviously is a feature that allows you to provision these virtual environments. They run within the browser. They allow you to provision. It's basically like running VS Code within the browser with an underpinning workflow or workload engine. And so what they've recently announced is integrations with our folks over at JetBrains, which is fantastic. So now with Rider, which I know is your tool of choice, Jim, through JetBrains Gateway, you can do a remote IDE experience for .NET developers. So I guess if you're into the Codespaces thing, I doubt you are using Codespaces for building out Octopus. You're just grabbing source and going, I assume.
I am.
Yeah.
But that's probably more of a when it was invented thing rather than a because we shouldn't thing. I had a bit closer look at Codespaces this week after talking about it last week and saying that I really liked the local dev experience for when I wanted it. And I was pleased to find that Codespaces actually use .dev container under the hood, which means that you can actually run them locally as well using the GitHub remote container extension. So you can run a Codespace both locally and in the cloud, which is awesome. Haven't quite got it working with the Rider extension yet, but definitely worked for Visual Studio.
So yeah, that's now available. It's available as a beta, of course. If you're at all interested, you can check that out at the GitHub blog, which is at github.blog. Always love the TLDs. Shout out to the folks who grab the TLDs. I've seen things like .university, .new, .app, .blog, whatever. Like TLDs are kind of fun to play with. So TypeScript. Last week we talked about TS reset from Matt Pocock, Mr. TypeScript himself. And shortly afterwards, we saw the release of TypeScript 5 release candidate. So this was a post made on March 1st. And this is great because obviously with TypeScript, it's you want to make sure that it's always moving forward, and they're always pushing out updates. They're almost in competition with the VS Code team in terms of who can ship more. You get a huge laundry list in this blog post of everything that's changed. And I would imagine that everyone's got sort of their bugaboo sort of thing that they care about in terms of what's new and what's fixed in TypeScript. Anything jump out at you in terms of what you were looking at? I mean, I've talked a lot about these things with various folks on various shows, talked about decorators and talked about other sorts of things. But yeah, was there anything that kind of tickled your fancy or anything that you were looking forward to?
The decorators scare me a bit. I've got some scars in there, but I love all enums or unions. Loving the look of exhaustive switch case completions.
Yeah,
that kind of
I
stuff.
think we talked about that last one. Yeah, we talked about that one last time. So
yeah,
cool. So yeah, definitely worth checking out. And if you're at all interested, you can obviously grab the latest bits by using the RC moniker there, and that gives you the version for that. And then the other way you can grab this is obviously through the VS Code extension, which is available for TypeScript nightlies as well. So if you're at all interested, you can grab it that way as well. Staying with Microsoft, and another technology that I know you're an absolute #1 fan of there, Jim, is NuGet. NuGet is the NuGet's one of those technologies that will never die. It's kind of like I kind of put it in the same classification as like the VB6 runtime or JSON or XML or NuGet will be with us forever. When they dust off the rust encased hard disks, they will find NuGet packages somewhere on them. So NuGet 6.5 is also available. I love the title, by the way. This was something that I really appreciated. The sweetest way to manage your packages. And I was like, we're all the way down to the chewy chocolate center. So anyways, in NuGet 6.5, which is included in VS 2022 and .NET 7 out of the box, they've added some highlights here. So being able to obviously streamline your package management through a variety of like directory packages, props support, list create and remove package source mappings inside NuGet options within VS Code, or sorry, VS Studio. Sorry, that just rolls off the tongue now like a bad habit. NuGet now uses server provided retry after delay on any time you hit a 429 response, which is cool. As anyone knows, if you're downloading the packages for a project you don't have down on disk and you've got a massive project and you're trying to pull them all down, getting a 429 response is not always the nicest thing. Can be very frustrating, having to retry, etc., etc. .NET List package now supports machine readable output in JSON formats. I guess that's useful if you're in a CI context. Warnings not as errors now support NuGet warnings. Yay. VS now reloads package sources when a NuGet.config is modified outside the IDE. That's always important to make sure that you have a system watcher, a file system watcher available to track changes. And then finally, dependencies can be restored for projects listed in a solution filter file with NuGet.exe. So I know that you love NuGet, Jim. Like you were just loving this update, but obviously a lot of folks are using NuGet, and of course we had.
NuGet's amazing. NuGet is amazing. A lot of this was Visual Studio stuff and things like that, which I don't use.
Okay, fair enough. We don't judge here. We're never. We hate we're equal opportunity. We hate everything equally or love everything equal. So in terms of technology, of course. Grafana has posted a new type of chart, a 3-dimensional chart. They're moving into the 3rd dimension. So they've introduced the new chart called the XYZ chart. This gives you an ability to visualize your data using that 3rd dimension. This is useful, obviously, if you're wanting to add an additional series and you want to be able to track that. So Grafana is a visualization tool for tracking all kinds of data. Very, very popular in the sort of cloud native space, used by a lot of folks there. Some really rich visualizations. And so now you have the ability of adding a 3rd series for their XYZ chart, which is fantastic. So I didn't think that there would be much need for a 3rd dimension, but I guess some people need, like, time obviously comes to mind in some respects.
Yeah, I was thinking, I mean, surely these graphs are time series based anyway, so technically they're 4-dimensional graphs, I guess.
Well, yeah, I guess. Yeah. I mean, it depends. It depends on what the access value will be.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that they give you instructions on how to use it, and I found that Grafana is actually pretty usable. And getting the data into Grafana is pretty simple, and once there, provides a really nice visualization for these things. So definitely worth checking out there. I meant to reorder this. I apologize, but I was going to put all the GitHub ones together, but there you go. So what can you do? GitHub issues and projects, March 2nd update. So we have some new updates for things like projects and issues. So markers on roadmaps. The idea here is that you can track your upcoming dates in your roadmap by visualizing due dates. So this is like via milestones, etc. And this is now present up on the project view. This is using the new project view. So there's 2 types of projects that you typically have in GitHub. There's the old classic project, and then there's the new one. And this is using that new one. The other one that I thought was kind of cool is now you can manage projects from the command line. So I've been a big fan for a long time about the GitHub CLI. That's GH. And someone has written an extension for it, which allows you to manage your projects from within the command line. So this wasn't available before, and now someone's written an extension. And actually, let me just take a look at this extension. Oh, I guess it's not there. Well, it's called GH Projects. I guess they linked it to the wrong place. But so this is the CLI extension for projects. And I guess GitHub wrote this extension. That's cool. So the GH project extension now exposes this capability through the command line CLI, and so you can now manage your projects on the CLI, which is fantastic.
There really seems to be a lot of work going on in this space.
Yes,
they're getting more and more powerful by the moment.
Let's hope there's. What are you saying? You're hoping there's an exhaust port somewhere we can fire a photon torpedo into or something? I'm missing my. You know what's going to happen now is that the nerds out there are going to be like, you got your Star Trek mixed up with your Star Wars. I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. Whatever. Come at me. Leave a comment. I don't care. All right. GitHub Actions introducing faster GitHub-hosted x86, 64 macOS runners. So runners are the workhorse of GitHub Actions. They are basically the machines that are there to run your workloads. And for a while, the runners we had were, they were kind of maybe a little bit underpowered. And so what a lot of people have been asking for is some beefier machines to run on. And so now we have one for macOS. And so we can now provision one of these by, I can't know if you can't see it here. You can see it right there. It says macOS. I think that says macOS 12. Yeah, macOS 12-XL for extra large. Sorry, there it is right now. So you can grab the latest. 12 obviously is the OS. Extra large is the XL there. And so now you can get an instance, a runner instance that is 3-core macOS hosted runners for running your workloads, which is fantastic. Worth checking out.
Right. I had no idea they had macOS runners.
Yep. All right. Here are the runner images. So this is the runner code. I'm looking for the runner images. So if you're doing self-hosted runners, these are the virtual environments. Blah blah blah. Yeah, here they are. So these are the available images that you can grab. Oh, did you say ARM? My bad. I don't know if ARM is available. My apologies.
One of the I've got this screaming fast M1 on my laptop, but there's a whole lot of things that just really aren't ready for ARM yet.
Okay, I'm running on an M2, so there you go.
Well, yeah.
A little bit of a humble brag. So
yeah.
Anyway, sticking with actions, admins can now bypass environment protection rules. This one was important to me because this was one that I would sometimes hit. So RBAC rules, which are basically enforcement rules for ensuring protection, which means things like, all your tests have to pass or all your checks have to, be green, etc., before you can, merge a PR, for example. These are protection rules that are available there. And now they're providing this sort of like emergency break glass mechanism for admins. And this is sometimes really important, especially if you're doing like an emergency deployment or something of that nature. There are definite reasons for doing this. And so this was a small footnote, but I thought it was bear mentioning just for selfish reasons because I saw it and I was like, ooh, because I sometimes would have wanted that. So anyways, we're checking out.
Yeah.
Everyone's favorite tool, Git. Git is, it is a thing, I guess is the best compliment you can give it. So this is an article that I saw on
It was revolutionary.
Sure. I'm sure Linus has gotten many compliments about Git, but there you go. So this was an article I saw on Dev2, which I thought was interesting. 20 Git commands that will make you a version control pro. And I thought, okay. So it starts off like every one of these articles does, which is the bare bones ones like config and init and clone and add and branch. And we all know these ones. But then it goes into kind of a deeper detail, sort of like what you can do around some of these things. So adding tags, for example, how you do merges, how you do resets. Moving files is an important one. Too often I see people not moving and not preserving, history. They just simply destroy, YOLO, push, merge, whatever. It doesn't matter. There's a lot of files that you need to preserve that history. And so I think that cherry picking is a lost art. So I think that there's definitely some things that you can mention here. But obviously, some of these are built into tools. Like GitKraken has obviously the ability to push and pop your stashes, for example. But stashing is super useful for me if I'm taking on a new branch and then I need to just commit my changes somewhere temporarily. That's always helpful. But this one got I was surprised at how much pickup this one got for how simple it was. But
Yeah,
I'm assuming you used all these and more. Is there a particular command
certainly
that you
have.
struggle with?
Yeah, there are definitely commands I struggle with. Rebase,
Yep.
interactive
Everyone's
rebase, and
favorite.
all the different
Yep.
kinds of rebases are always hard to manage. And also because you do them so rarely, and they're so you've got to get them just right for them to work. But my favorite Git command is also not here, and that is git bisect. So yeah, when you have a bug somewhere between version A and where are my hands? Version A and B. It will do a search for you and find that bug.
Well, assuming you know what you're looking for.
Well, no, you don't even have to know what you're looking for because you just find when it did work, you mark that end, and then you know it doesn't work now. And you just keep running and trying to even run the code, see if the bug's there.
Yeah.
And then if you say it's there, then it'll switch. It'll do a binary search until you find it. So usually within 4 or 5 tests, you found exactly the commit that has the bug. Great for when you can't find it in the code itself.
There you go. Microsoft Teams is something we don't use at Octopus. We use Slack. A lot of people use Slack. A lot of people use Teams. In fact, if you take a look at the usage of Teams versus Slack, it's kind of like it's no longer even a horse race. Teams has just completely shot out of the cannon and hockey sticked its way and seems to be, eating the world at the moment. So if you don't believe me, you can take a look at, Teams, Slack adoption rates. And yeah, you get a little bit of FUD there, but I've seen some charts where this is always risky. Let's go take a look at images. There's always that chart here. Here we go. This is, I think, the one that I saw. So green is Slack, blue is Teams, and it's just gone whoop like that. So, yeah, interesting.
Wow.
So
that's users, not growth rate.
This is daily active users.
Daily active users, yeah.
Worldwide.
Wow.
So
I had no idea.
This is the one that made me laugh. It was like, what? So I don't know who came up with this one. Source, company announcements, VentureBeat, TechCrunch. Okay, I guess.
Yeah.
Charter. Yeah. But anyways, I think most of the charts here state that, well, this one obviously states the opposite. That's in 2019. But it looks like there was an inflection point for Teams somewhere around 2020, at least at the start of pandemic. I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. It depends on how you're asking the question. But for total usage, it looks like Teams is running out. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The whole point of this was to mention that the Teams project obviously has gotten a lot of traction around Microsoft. They're utilizing .NET. And recently, they put out a blog post from the team regarding the permission service. Permissions are obviously a very challenging space that we know about over at Octopus Deploy. It's something we care deeply about and we wrestle with. Permissions can be a bit gnarly. And so they have a permission service that allows you to obviously do validation, etc., for safety and privacy scenarios. And they recently migrated to .NET 6 and were able to increase performance by 100% and also reduce latency by 30 to 45%, depending upon the context. So this is a blog post that I caught. I was like, interesting. How did they do this? And so obviously they upgraded to the new format. They modernized the core base by utilizing host builders, dependency injection, replaced blocking dependencies with .NET 6 compatible and maintained alternatives. Set the build target, obviously, replace Owen, Katana with Kestrel and ASP.NET, and then upgraded their CI/CD pipeline to support .NET 6 SDK. So there's a lot. Some of these things sound simple or not. They can be very, very challenging. And so kudos to the team for upgrading because it looks like they've garnered the wins from the migration itself. And so if you are looking at migrating your projects and you need some kind of some case studies to justify to your business stakeholder, your boss, about why we should make the investment to migrate, this could be an article you could point to. So,
just mention where they were coming from.
What do you mean?
What version they were coming from and to?
They were coming from
4.7.2.
4.7.2.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So you get a lot with Owen to Kestrel, I would think, and then I wonder what the blocking dependencies they're referring to are.
Yeah. So if we take a look, connection lease timeouts. An interesting observation about during rollout. This is interesting. Deployment to 1% of our regions, then 5, then 10, then each step parameters. Okay, blah blah blah. Shouldn't .NET be more? I don't know what this is referring to, but there you go. Output latency. Look at that. That's nice. A little bit of drop off. Input latency, whatever. So yeah, there in terms of the blocking, they didn't mention. I don't think they mentioned it too carefully. So they talk about modernize the code using iLogger and iOptions pattern. Oh, replace blocking dependencies.
Yeah, that
with
one.
.NET 6 compatible and maintain alternatives. Sometimes that could be anything.
Totally.
If you think about it. So maybe they were using a library for I'm totally guessing here, like async await or something like that.
That's what I'm kind of thinking myself, but but massive improvements. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I like citing these things not because I'm trying to pump the tires of Microsoft, but more for the fact that I know that there's a lot of developers out there sometimes that they struggle with having those conversations with folks like, why would we upgrade it? It still works. There's no motivation to upgrade. Well, 100% performance improvement and latency reductions, that's really important. And that means dollars, and that means extra customers and better resiliency and also faster dev time moving forward. So these things are important, and that's why I try and cite these things when I can. New pricing for GitLab Premium. And this was a blog post that went out. If anyone's a GitLab subscriber, you can see your bill go from $19 a month to $29 per user per month. That's quite a big jump. So that's like about, 30% increase on your bill. So obviously, if you're an existing customer, you have a one-time transition price of $24 per month automatically applied to upcoming renewals up until a certain time. There's obviously going to be justification for this. You could point to anything, really. Cost of maintaining the service, inflation, yada, yada, yada. But I would imagine some folks are kind of going to look at this and say, oh, okay, that's interesting, an upgrade. So in terms of pricing. So I just saw this, and this is just an FYI in case anyone's using GitLab up there watching this and saying, oh, that might impact me. So Podman is another great tool that's utilized by a lot of developers. This is obviously, an alternative to something like Docker. If you're utilizing containers, allows you to obviously build and host containers locally. And this is a blog post that it's kind of like a 101 for Podman Desktop, but for developers. So if you're looking at utilizing containers in a local context, and you're doing so to build out containers, and you're trying to obviously debug and utilize them effectively, Podman, this article goes into a lot of detail about how to set it up, how to use it, how to utilize registries, building your images. So it's a kind of akin of a how-to walkthrough where you use Docker. So, like Docker's got, provisioning of images and establishing them, and there's like, you use the CLI as well. So Podman's very similar in that sense. So when you create images as well, obviously this being from Red Hat, they have an OpenShift extension. So yeah, just a very high level sort of article on Podman, which I thought was cool. And you're utilizing containers in a way that, makes it more developer oriented. This is an article that can help, which is great. A beginner's guide to OpenTelemetry. This is another highlight of mine. The reason why I cited this one is because OpenTelemetry is garnering a lot of attention, getting a lot of news lately. And for a variety of reasons, I think it's worth noting that OpenTelemetry is changing the game in terms of gathering and analyzing telemetry across a sort of vendor agnostic means. So OpenTelemetry is from the CNCF, OpenTelemetry.io. You get a high-level view of what's there. They provide not only the specifications, but also implementations of the spec itself for a variety of ecosystems. So you can see there's integrations directly with products. There's obviously vendors that support the spec. And then there's the registry for a whole bunch of things that you're looking at doing. They have libraries as well if you're utilizing Go, if you're utilizing .NET, or etc. All kinds of different languages. Those libraries now exist. This article from logs.io talks about, hey, this is what OpenTelemetry is. So OpenTelemetry, again, is a bunch of different things. But basically, if you're doing anything with events, tracing, and logs, this is what it provides you. And so if you're looking to get your hands dirty at least a little bit, and you don't know where to begin, this would be a good starting point. Thus the name, a beginner's guide or an essential guide to OpenTelemetry. So OpenTelemetry surrounds basically APIs and SDKs, a collector component, which is for receiving that telemetry data, and then OTLP protocol for transmitting that data across. And so a lot of this is available up on OpenTelemetry.io. But I think that the thing about the docs that are available up on OpenTelemetry are a little bit obtuse. They're a little bit opaque. They're not super easy to read. And so what I liked about this article was that it actually made it a little bit more approachable for me to understand. So definitely worth checking out there and talking about what's what in the OpenTelemetry space. And so if you're at all interested in finding out more, you can go to this blog post. And as you can, this pretty lengthy one that talks a lot about what OpenTelemetry is and how it works.
Adding that one to my list right now.
Nice. Yeah, OpenTelemetry is definitely important. I think that it like all infrastructure on the surface, it doesn't strike you as very interesting, but when you realize that it's vendor agnostic and gives you this notion of, okay, if I change an aggregate sync, like if I choose to use X versus Y later on, I don't have to worry about the fact that my telemetry logs are going somewhere else. It will still support the protocol. Wrapping up, ThePrimeagen. He is absolutely hilarious. He does these React videos, which are hysterical. And he talks a lot about Rust, TypeScript, development in general. And he's got this Twitch stream that you can follow. You'll find it at ThePrimeagen. He also does he publishes all his videos to YouTube as well. Like, he made the joke of, like, what's the best VS Code, the top 10 VS Code extensions. And from 0 to 10, it was Neovin. So he was basically saying, like, get rid of VS Code. But he's done a lot of great videos. He's got this. He looks like my dad did when I was younger. His takes, his tech React takes, they're so funny. I watched one today where he was talking about TS Reset from Matt Pocock, and there was a moment where Matt was kind of giving the motivation as to why you want to use it.
In this case, that means checking that passed item is an object, then checking that it's not null, and then checking.
Oh my goodness, these runtime checks.
And at that point, I was dying laughing because I was watching him write the code. And he's like my spirit animal. He was having the exact same reaction I was watching the video. And like, I have this kind of like, I'm kind of ashamed to admit it, but I have watched my fair share of React videos on YouTube because I like watching them. I watch a lot of stand-up, and I watch people watching stand-up. And you almost have a better experience when you do that. When you're watching people laugh, it kind of makes you laugh as well. It's exactly the same. It's the exact same experience with this channel. You get to see he'll watch tech videos of things that are a bit controversial. Some things are obviously like, this is wrong, but some of them are kind of like on the edge. And then he'll stop the video and be like, "Yep, that's true," or "No, that is not true." If you're looking for a laugh and if you're wanting to see some pretty good talks around TypeScript, and he talks a lot about Rust, and talks a lot about various approaches to tackling problems. So that's ThePrimeagen on Twitch.
Awesome.
Oh, there you go. Another show is in the can. Another episode of Deploy on Friday. Jim, any final parting words from what's Piggy's passed out behind you there?
Yeah, she's all done.
Yeah,
all done. Not like snoring too loudly. I can hear it, but I think it's probably soft enough that you guys aren't being subject to it.
Yeah, that's all right. I'm sure she'll be up and at 'em by next week, starting Monday, just like we are.
Yeah.
And we'll see you again on the next episode of Deploy on Friday. Don't forget to obviously send us a comment if you feel like you want us to cover something in the next show. And if you give us a like and subscribe, I know you sound like such a YouTuber when you say
you've got to say it. You have to. I think you get content filtered out if you don't say it.
It's almost meaningless at this point. Please like and subscribe. Yeah. Please like and subscribe. Yeah, but please like and subscribe if you can. God, I feel like I am such a sellout. I am the worst. Anyways, we really appreciate it. On behalf of Jim and myself, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you on the next one next week on Deploy on Friday. Take care.
Catch you later.